All right, so next up on the table, the Moebius models, 1965 Golden Commandos, factory altered wheelbase Plymouth satellite. Okay, now have not done a Moebius model before, but I've seen some reviews other people have done of their kits, and they always seem to be good quality builds. And I saw this one, and I thought, that looks pretty neat, so I bought it and put it in my stock. Now, after finishing the Tom McEwen funny car from Polar Lights, which is the last build before this one, I really enjoyed that, and I still had an itch to build, one of these crazy type of racing machines. So saw it on my shelf, and I figured, all right, you're up. So let's take a look at this. They have some really nice box art here, and there are a number of options how you can build a car. You only get to build one car, obviously, but they have this white version, the two-tone version, scoop, open hood with the tall stacks. I am kind of inclined to go that direction, but we'll take a look at all the goodies in the box. Now, whenever I do a kit from a manufacturer I have not built from before, I always like to pay close attention to the instructions, because instructions will always and obviously have a big effect on your build experience. So, without good instructions, it's just a box of parts. So, let's take a look at this. First thing, look at that. Full color photos of actual builds of the car, interior, exterior, even a little history of the Golden Commandos racing teams. So, this is great stuff. And then looking through the rest of the pages, nice illustrations, text descriptions, little notes on the side. And flipping through here, just for this kit, even though you have the parts to build the one version or the other, there are also a whole bunch of extra spare parts in there to do your own little individual interpretation of the vehicle, which, I will probably be doing. And again, with the pictures, this is great. They actually give you a little bit of a history on the different engines that were used, carbureted, tall stack, short stack with the injectors. Definitely like that one, so I'll probably be building that. And then a nice paint guide on the back. So that is good stuff. Now you see here quite a bit of plastic that you get in the kit. So, and I even have a few sprues that are stacked up here. And, I don't like to go through every little part and piece when looking at the sprues, but we'll spend maybe a little extra time on this one, since this is the first time we have a Moebius kit. And this is it's really nice molding. I mean, look at all the little detail on there. They give you separate door cards for the interior instead of a tub. I really like that. And if you see here, steering knuckles, I'm going to have to take another look at the instructions. I'm wondering if you have posable steering with this. And we have part of the front suspension here. Now, this is where we get into part of what gives us the higher part count. You see here we have stock seats for the front. We have the rear bench. We also have the rear seat delete, which would go in there. We have a scoop. We have this different type of exhaust here. Again, more exhaust. We got the tubes. We got a more standard exhaust that probably goes with the carbureted engine. But you can already see lots of different ways you can build this. These are the good old stock steel wheels. Those are nicely molded. They got all the lug nuts in there. And we have a hood, one of two hoods that we get, depending on how you want to build the engine. Got a nicely detailed firewall in there. Look at that. brakes for the wheel backs. Dashboard. That looks very good. And we have a whole bunch of engine parts. As you can see from those pictures, the engine looks to be a very nice build on this. We got lots of little detail. Of course, there are some extra pieces, whether you do the carburation or if you do the injector stacks. So there will be some leftovers. We got some more exhaust here. So options upon options, and all the parts are there. And that means whatever you choose when you're done, you're going to have a lot of things to add to your spare parts box. So if you want to do different things with other kits, you have a nice resource to go to. Now we have a bit of a subframe here, separate from the body pan. I do like that. One piece rear with the springs and the drive shaft, which usually I am not much of a fan of, but this is molded really well. Yeah, that's really nice. Because if you see, the reason I tend not to like the one-piece molding is it can get very blocky, and but this, looking at the way the springs come in, that's just the way it would look if they were separate pieces and they got built up. The only thing you have here is the hollow inside, but that's going to be up against the body pan. You will never see that. So that's really nice. The K-member for the front, that looks great. We have some chrome, and this is some pretty nice chrome. We have more wheel options here. Yeah, so we got, you can do the steel wheels. Yep, you get front and back for the chromed up wheels. And we got bumper, grill. Yes, this all the stacks. Those look pretty neat. And look at that. I wonder if that's almost like a slide mold there, because they are hollow going in instead of just being a flat top. That's great. That should look really nice, poking up through that hood. Okay. And we have a nice set of tires. There is no option to build a like out of the showroom style stock car. So you just get the one set of tires. We get some more traditional stock type tires that you would get out of the showroom. Those will be for the front. And for the rear, to put the meat to the pavement, more of a slick. They are not branded, but they are nicely molded. So that's nice to see. We have a hood, second hood. The offset hole is if you build a carbureted version, and then the scoop would go over this. And you see underneath, we have all the holes that you would, guide holes, you would drill those out with a hand drill to guide in that scoop. And last but certainly not least, the body. Now we got some nice sideline here, and basically that's going to be the paint line for doing the two-tone. So we can mask off right on there. We don't have a line down here, but that's a level line, so just straight across, and we'll get the two tones there. Actually have the Plymouth letters are raised on the back trunk. That's nice. Yep, this looks good, and yeah, nice and straight and level too. Good stuff, good stuff. All right, we got some clear, which I'm going to keep in the bag so it does not get scratched up. Standard front rear windshield, the little vent windows, and then we have headlights, taillights, signal lights, side windows, which I will probably not use so that it's open. And then we have a nice set of decals. So, depending on which color version you choose to do, you get the decals for both. We get a gauge cluster decal. That might be a tachometer decal. Those look like grill decals for the carburetors. If you build the more stock engine So, nice. Oh, and look, even trim line decals for that would go, I would imagine, for the side of the body on this raised line here. That's a nice touch. Those might be a little tricky to put on, but once they're on there, that should look pretty good. Have to see about that. Alrighty, so there we go. That is the Moebius Golden Commandos. So, now the kit does not list an actual parts count, but gauging by the stack, there's a good number of pieces in here, so it should be a nice detailed build. Certainly the instructions suggest that from the way it goes together. And just to give you an idea, these are the extra parts list. They actually highlight all the part numbers for you. I love this because I can go in right from the start. That will be part of my initial cleanup, is to remove all those parts, set them aside so there's no confusion. So that's good stuff. And yeah, you know, when you do models, when you get a chance to get a kit that actually shows you builds, color photos of the actual builds, you know, if you want to be, and since they give you some of the history of the actual cars and the racing team, you could build this right down to the perfectionist detail of how the actual car looked or looks, and these color photos then are, you know, just irreplaceable in terms of your information source. But also, when you're building, you know, if you have a question when you're building your engine, you know, oh, how exactly does something look? You know, you can flip back here and you have an actual picture of the built engine. So that's, can't stress that enough. And same with the, if I can get the page turned, same with the body itself. And also, when you have the color photos like this, you really get a good idea of how the suggested paint schemes look and how it looks together. You know, painted box art is fine. You know, it's a nice way to look at the model, but it's not the actual model. So I like to see the actual kit. And like for this, like looking at this right away, I can see, you know, I don't know if I'm going to go with quite as metallic a color as this, but definitely on the interior, I'm not going for a like this almost metallic tan. No, thank you. But you know, that's the nice part with this. Like I was saying, you get to see how these colors that they suggest actually look on the built kit, and you know, you can make some decisions right off the bat as to how you want to do yours when you build it. So, and there's those tall stacks poking out of the hood. I think that's that just says go fast. So yeah, definitely going to build it that way. I will probably go with more of I have that Krylon Satin Pebble color. I really like that one, so I'll probably be doing that in the interior. And yeah, so that sums it up. Alrighty. Now, normally I would go through and, you know, start with the painting and whatnot. But, you know, in the last few builds I've done, I've taken a moment to at least do a JPEG of the cleanup. But in this one, I actually thought I would jump in and talk a little bit, because with this kit, these are all extra parts. Now, you may be saying, especially if you're new to the hobby, gee, why do I need to have all that in the kit? You know, you got to pay for it, and now you're not using it. However, important point. However, you know, this is like a treasure trove. You know, when you get a kit, and the reason I stopped with this one, because this kit happens to have, you know, quite a collection of extra parts, as you can see here. But when you get these extra parts, this is all stuff. Save it. You never know when it comes in handy, and sometimes it can make a real difference in things. Now to point some things out, just so you get an idea, and the reason why I say they can really come in handy is, you know, even if you've only built one kit, you've probably had a moment where you cut something and pew, off it goes, and you never find the piece again. Spare parts bots. You open a kit, a piece is broken, spare parts bots. You get your replacements. And when you get a kit like this, where let's say maybe you're building something and you're not 100% on how the wheels look, or you want to add a little something to the engine, or look, wheels, engine parts. So, and also, you can repurpose parts for other things. Exhaust pipes, extra exhaust systems are great if you're building something and you want to have like ductwork or something like that. You can repurpose this stuff. So, this kit, because it comes with, a couple of different build options for the engine, which affects the hood, whether or not you choose to use the scoop. This kit looks like it was originally packaged also to be built as a stock kit. So you get a lot of stock engine parts. So that there's a lot of things you can use here. So, whoops, including a better grip on the paintbrush. But that's, when you, especially if it's like the first, or maybe second kit that you've bought, and you see all this stuff and you think, oh, what am I going to do with this? Save it. Lecture for today. Now, on the other side of things, the cleanup, you see this pile of debris here. This is what I cleaned up from the kit. And actually, there was very, very little flash. So it's wonderful working with these kits with new tooling. The parts are clean, the molds are crisp. I didn't see any parting line issues. When you look at parts and they kind of had this little step on them, especially on parts that are tubular or, have a cylindrical shape to them. The parting lines can be, a real extra task to smooth those down and clean them up. But here, mostly what you're seeing are little remnants of injector pins that were attached to some pieces and some excess sprue that I cut away to make my painting easier. So, that's really nice. So I'm just going to move all this stuff aside for a minute. So now, you may have remembered on the box art there are steel wheels in the rear. However, the kit comes with a full set of custom wheels, actually a set and a half of custom wheels, because, and as you see here, there are wheels for two different size front tires, even though you only get one size in the kit. So basically, you have enough wheels here for, 2 extra cars, which is pretty neat. So I'll slide all this over. All right, and here we go with color. Okay, so I was going to do a few more JPEGs showing some of the painting before getting into actual assembly. But at this point, I thought I would stop and go ahead and do the painting review, because I'm going to talk a little bit about masking the body for the paint scheme. So first, however, we'll talk just a little bit about what's happening here. Now, the primary colors that you see, pretty simple, gray primer, and then either the that Krylon Sand Pebble that I liked so much for the interior parts. Gray primer with white for the body color parts. All the, let's say, mechanical elements, engine pieces, whatnot. Black primer with either the red for, the engine, or brushed nickel for the exhaust, or the metallic aluminum I have for some of the front suspension parts. So there you go. Then I went ahead and did a little detail painting, for the for the interior tub sides, the door cards. It's a pretty simple car inside, but the moldings are anything but simple. And we can see here, with a little bit of work, you can bring out a lot of nice detail on this door card. Now, you can see there were some, what I guess would be upholstery lines that were in there for the sorted buttons that would have been holding that together. So after I sprayed, I went back in with my Tamiya brown Pentaline accent, and I just put a dab over where each button is, and then just brushed it out with my fine brush and got that detailing there. I then painted the window crank silver, did the buttons in silver, and then took my Gundam marker to do around the door seam. Now, obviously here, got a little sloppy, but that's going to be right against the driver's seat, so I'm not going to worry about it. And then two, we have those nifty little pull-up doorknob locks there that I had mentioned. So did the post in silver and the little button on top in black. Obviously, foot pedals, steering shaft, steering column with its control arms on there. For the brake backs, just did them in steel, put a little blue on some of those mold details. I have to admit, I don't know what exactly they're representing there, but hey, why not touch them up, bring a little color detail in there, and then Semigloss Black around the rim. For the body tub, or the chassis plate, I should say, this is the Krylon Satin Pebble, but again, I went in there with the Tamiya brown panel liner and just worked it with my brush to give a little bit of definition and, scuffage on that interior carpeting. Since this is a race car, I doubt people are really going in there with nice clean shoes. Now, I haven't done anything under the body yet, but this frame portion will end up being semi-gloss black. The fuel tank I will probably do in steel or aluminum, and then that will go together. The front K-member, the lower K-member, I did in the aluminum. Just a little detail, contrasting metallic tone, steel for the control rods there, and semi-gloss black for what will be the underarm of the knuckles, steering knuckles. So that's looking good. Dashboard, relatively simple for this. I am going to paint these little knobs and doodads silver. This is basically following the paint suggestion guide. There will be a big decal that sits right in there. Yay, make my life easy. So that will basically be done. Nothing much to show on the engine yet, just red for the block, painted silver for the transmission there. All the detail work has to be done on that, obviously. Going to some body panels, the inner fenders, not much to do there. Front bulkhead, rear bulkhead, there we go. Radiator mount. The firewall did have some nice wire detail molded into it, so you bet I went and picked that out. Front shocks with some yellow, steering wheel. And then for our underbody stuff, we have the rear assembly here. Did that in the drive shaft in steel. I will be doing the differential in Semigloss Black, as well as the frame extension for the front. Rear shocks. These are little control arms for the fuel injectors, and a few other little things on here that were painted. Same here for engine detail. So that is all moving apace. Oh, do a little vocabulary today. Apace. All right, so let's get this stuff out of the way. On the chrome tree, haven't done too much. I don't really see a need to do too much on this. I'll be painting the wiper blades flat black. I did just a preliminary black wash on the grill. I did a first coat of turn signal amber for the front signal lights, and actually just used some red marker to color in those rear tail lights so that I still had the, reflective property of the chrome underneath. So that came out pretty nice. And for the wheels, what I am going to do is keep the chrome surround, but if you remember from the Tamiya and Barracuda funny car, I did a two-tone wheel with gunmetal on the interior for the spokes. And I'm going to use a Testors graphite metallic for that, which is this color right here. So that will be contrasting with the chrome, and I think that will look pretty good. I can't claim originality on that because, oh, surprise, surprise, that's what they did with their front wheels. And the more I was looking at the painting, depictions, the more and more I like this. And since I am doing the custom wheels front and rear, I think that should really look pretty sharp. Now here's how the dashboard is going to come out. I did a little detail painting on the radio, got to finish that up. The gauge cluster decal that will sit in there. Now, the main part of what I wanted to discuss here was this paint scheme for the body. Now, I did have a JPEG or two there, painting the body up with the primer. It's a gray primer underneath, did the whole thing in white. Now it's time to come back and mask for those stripes. Now, since I took a little time out to talk about masking somewhat in detail on the Tamiya and Barracuda funny car, I thought I would do another little recap on masking with this kit, since the paint scheme is a little more complicated with these different stripes. With the McEwen, it was just getting the blue on the side with a little belt line detail. So here we go. This is the white. Now, masking, tape masked so that I can spray my, copper, whatever. I have a Testors paint that I bought. I forget the name of it. I have the can upstairs, but, of course, have that down in the description, and you'll see it once it's on there. But the reason I want to talk about this is there are some complex features here on this paint scheme, which seems at first, just some lines, but in this depiction, they did a curve up here on the front to scallop it. There's a scallop on the rear deck for where the white goes into the copper. And, when I started masking, I thought that's going to be pretty tough to do. Not that I couldn't do it, but I thought, I bet there's a little bit of a compromise. And what I did, looking at the body, I'm like, this body is more angular than rounded. The only really rounded parts are the fenders. So, the wheel cutouts and the fenders. So I thought, let me go angular for this paint merge on the back. So, and that made my life a whole lot easier, especially when I brought in my handy dandy ruler. Now, I do find it much easier doing this in metric scale because millimeters are such a fine little measurement. And, I just laid out my tape, measured. And the point that I wanted to talk about with this is using your body detail to guide you through the masking. And what do I mean by that? Well, here on the trunk, you see there is a little ridge line, a little crease in the trunk lid. Thank you. So that immediately became a reference point. So rather than trying to center or anything like that, I had this center line, which was the crease, and I could just measure over and measure over. 8 millimeters to each side. I ran my tape. For the initial siding of the roof line, we see here in the painting guide, or the color of the model, the hood center stripe and the rear center stripe follow the width of the cutout for the stacks. So, okay, tape is very sticky. So the first thing I did when I did this, I laid down the tape for the center roof stripe right in line with that. That's just a simple visual cue. I carried that to the trunk, and then as the extra guide, did my measurement off center to make sure I wasn't crooked, because now that there's an obvious reference line in the crease, got to make sure, oops, there we go, get it back on camera. Got to make sure that, you're not off, because then it would look really crooked really fast. Then I came down onto the hood. This was simple because since I'm painting only the width of the cut in the hood for the stacks, I just ran right along the side of the hood. Now here they narrow the stripe coming out of the cutout. I decided to skip that and just keep it nice and straight. They have the scallops here on the front. What I did, I figured, there's another nice crease line on the hood. So boom, that became my reference line. So I ran my tape down along the top crease on the fenders, got to the edge of the hood, put my tape on, and was able to then cut the tape to keep that. So my masking here will not have these nice curves and everything, but one, not that I couldn't do that, but I always talk about on this my channel here and with these videos of reward versus the effort it will take. And in the time it would take to do that, I just thought, one, I was a little concerned about getting it absolutely symmetrical, because if I didn't, I'd be annoyed with myself. And two, I thought with the angles, like I said, I think aesthetically, angles on the paint match better with the angles on the body. Now you may notice too, instead of my normal blue tape, you see some of this yellow tape. And this is, I treated myself, Tamiya masking tape, 10 millimeter. Why 10 millimeter? Well, on the side, the decal needs to fit in this white band. And I measured, and look at that. 10 millimeters is more than enough to give that white band for the lettering. So by just running one width of tape right down the side of the body, I got my white stripe, I got my lower bronze, and my upper bronze along the crease line. So there you go. For the back, again, this all the little detail work for the masking tape I did with the Tamiya tape. And the reason for that is this stuff, it's the first time I'm using it, so we'll see how it comes out after the spray. But, it comes in this handy little dispenser. You have the little cutting edge. But what I did with this, I would pull a length of tape, and I would lay it out extra width, and then I could come in carefully with a brand new super sharp X-Acto blade, and lightly, and in some places I did not go light enough and did do a little paint damage, but that's going to be sprayed over now, so I'm not concerned about it, made my cuts. So when it's done, I have nice straight lines, nice angles. The other reason that I bought this tape, not just to experiment with it, but in terms of getting into these small details, my old school blue tape here, really not the best option for that. But with this tape, because it's an hour tape, and I find that it bends and stretches. You can really, work the edges a little bit, shape them with your fingers, or shape it with your fingers to really get in and get a nice seam along the body. So it's very good in terms of its workability to get it where you need it. Once again, I will find out for sure once the spraying is done. So that's where it's at. So I'm going to do that final spray, and then, hey, it's assembly time, and we'll start putting this thing together because I want to see this built now. Studying all the pictures always gets me excited to get things together. So that's that. Back to work. Alrighty. Okay, and here we go with the major assembly part of the build. Okay, now before I bring the car out here and we get to see how that's looking, a few things I want to talk about with the instructions. Now, I don't mean this as a nitpicking, but it's more so, with every kit, pretty much from every manufacturer of kits that I've worked with, it seems there's always some little, thing in the instructions that for an experienced builder you will probably notice or understand how to remedy. But if you're beginning, or certainly like if it's a first kit, could really throw you. So I just wanted to point those things out. Now, initial thing, in the JPEGs, I had mentioned about the position of the oil pan. Now here we see it, and in the instructions, you will notice the sump of the oil pan is towards the front of the engine, which is a little unusual. Normally, when you look at these engines, the sump is towards the back. But as well with this engine, we have the oil filter sticking out the front. Normally that hangs off the side. So when I was building it, I just figured, oh, okay, it's a little bit of a different kind of engine. However, when it comes time to mount the engine with the oil sump forward, the way it's depicted in the instructions, it hits the tie rod as I had shown in the JPEGs. So when you build it, you just need to flip that around. And oddly enough, in this picture, they show the sump towards the rear of the engine. So a little miscue, I guess. Now also here, and I talked about, flipping the steering knuckles around to up the front ride height, but you will see here that they talk about assembling everything and then attaching the wheels here. And then they even make a note about being careful attaching the wheels so as not to break the front spindles or knuckles, whatever you want to call them. Now, I found that a little odd because when I looked ahead and I was reading through, looking at the way these pegs were for the wheel attachments, I thought these might be rather tight going on. The spindle or knuckle only sits in there on two little attachment pins. So if you push too hard, it's going to snap right through. So I did my wheels when I did, as you saw in the JPEGs, before the sub-assemblies were made it together so that I could support the spindle from behind and push the wheel in. And it was quite a tight fit. I'm not interested in rolling my car around, so I just glued the wheels in place. If you want to have a car that rolls, this will take a little extra step. You may have to hog out the retainer collars so that they fit on there a little bit looser. But if the wheel is going to sit vertical, there might be some slop in there. Then that I don't know, but I don't see the need to or the necessity to have the car roll. So that is that. One other thing that was interesting, although the wheels are on their spindles and the spindles are seated with these pins, there is no tie rod connecting the spindles together. So if you wanted to, you could just sandwich the spindles between the upper and lower suspension arm and not glue the spindle in place. And even though these won't be attached, you could then, for displaying the model, take the front wheels and just turn each one the same angle as if they were turned, and have that little bit of extra in your display. So something to consider. And the last thing I wanted to talk about with the instructions, they show you all the way over here in the engine assembly to attach the upper and lower radiator hose. Now, I specifically left those off until I had the engine and the subframe assembly in place with the framing for the front fenders and the radiator, because depending how you glue those radiator hoses in before you have the reference for the location of the radiator. There we go, red pointer. You know, the chance that you would glue those in exactly the right position to meet those mounting holes on the radiator are pretty low. And then you would have your hose sticking off in the space. You would then have to break it off the engine, reseat it to attach. So I just left the hoses off, waited until I had the radiator in place. Then I had 2 static points that I needed to attach to, engine to the radiator, and put the hoses in. Yes, it did make attaching the lower hose somewhat tricky, but that's what tweezers are for. Okay, so in they went. Now, no other issues or things to mention with the instructions at this point. The kit is going together very well. As you can see, there's not a whole lot of parts left to assemble, and even some of these are not going to be used in the kit. Parachute, probably going to do in like a flat green or something, and just a thin coat to leave out some of the black shadow of the primer, just for some color contrast on the back. This little air dam protector underneath the front bumper. I wasn't sure what color I wanted to do it in, but I'm just going to spray that in my bright aluminum, and that will go under the front bumper. So let's get the good stuff out. And here we go. Here is our chassis to this point. Now, every manufacturer does things a little bit different, and since this is my first Moebius kit, certainly in longer than I can remember if I ever did one, let's say, I found it pretty interesting the way this kit goes together. It is a little bit of a different design approach in the way this front area with the inner fenders and the radiator support fit together. Same with the way the door cards sit in there. But, this makes for a very solid structure. And I'm pretty impressed with the way it all fits. And, when it went together, these things all lined up very nicely. No issues. Dashboard, which normally, with cars, can sometimes be a little question of, is it angled right, positioned right, so you don't have a big gap with the body, or, is the steering wheel going to be pushed into the driver's seat? But with the just 2 little tabs and the way it all fits together, it just dropped in place, and it's nice. So there was a bit of a warp in the chassis pan, but now with everything assembled, it sits square on all 4 wheels. So that's a nice thing. Underneath, in the painting guide, they suggested leaving the frame white. I wanted to do mine in black to highlight it. And, just engine detail, headers coming off, rear suspension. So it's nice. It is a really nice build, and very happy with the way those ignition wires came out. Dashboard, I think, looks really good sitting in there. I may be adding seatbelts. It's a little late to do it. It'll probably be a big pain, but I don't know. Because after I put it together, I thought, maybe add a little something extra, but we shall see. But yeah, so far, this is great. The only remaining question is how well all of this is going to fit up into the body. So let's get that out. Now, I had talked about masking and everything, and to see how that would work out, and it did come out pretty well. That Testors paint I used was this flaming orange extreme lacquer. Whoa! Now, never used a lacquer paint before, but it came out pretty nice. I don't know if that was just this color or what the case may be. I did do 2 coats of it because the initial coat seemed a little weak. Again, that may be more due to the color since it is this sort of metallic. But, You know, the lacquers are known to dry quickly. I sprayed it on, and even in my garage with the little space heater on a not so warm day, in like 20 minutes, the coat was dry. And we have the tan underneath to match the interior. So I've already put in the front, for lack of anything else, we'll call this the front body bulkhead. Oh, and that's actually what they call it in the instructions. How about that? So we'll call this the rear bulkhead. Again, these are pieces that on a lot of models, especially models, older tooling, not to pick on AMT, but you know, a lot of their kits do use older toolings. Putting pieces in like this can be a little vague, but on this kit, looking in there, you can see there are these guide ridges inside either fender. And then here there is a lip for the rear that runs across the whole width and the surround. And then you have the two tabs on either side, which stop it from going in any further. Likewise on the front, you have these two ridges, which stop you putting it in any further. And I mean, these pieces, I test fitted them. They dropped right in. They were in place, and I was impressed. What a nice fit. You know, obviously this is a more modern tooling, but you know, and this is one of the things that's really nice when you do some of the older kits and then you go to one of the, you know, a more modern kit, is you can really appreciate how well a modern kit can go together, you know, if it is, the effort is put in for the tooling. So, as you can see, I've done little else with this. I used my Gundam marker to outline the body seams for the doors and the trunk, rather than using my Tamiya black panel liner. The reason I did that, the seam lines were rather shallow, and you know, for the panel liner to work really well, you need a little bit of a deeper, narrower channel, so the surface tension of the panel liner will just draw it through, and that wasn't happening here, and I didn't want it seeping out onto the actual body color. So I just went in there with my Gundam marker, and then it's done. Now, as far as, after all the talk I had about masking and prepping for the paint job, you can see there are some areas here where clearly I could have done a better job, but with a little touch-up work and some decals. Now the decals I'll keep on this side, since this is the less quality of the two sides. You know, they give you these chrome stripes that are supposed to simulate the body side moldings. So rather than making all sorts of effort to clean up this mess that I made, I'm just going to lay the decals right over them, and that'll cover that up, and that'll give me my nice edge. Here along the fender, I will probably do some little paint touch-ups there, and along this rear fender as well. Otherwise, it looks good. Some of this in the rear corners, that came up a little weak with the white on the front corners. The front bumper, rear bumper, we'll cover those up. So that's it. Yeah, and it's looking pretty good. Now, I didn't put the glass in yet. The kit does have full side glass. I may be cutting the side glass pieces along the B column so that I have an open window to see into that nice interior. We'll see. I gotta take a look at the clear parts. I haven't taken them out of the parts tree yet to see if there's any opacity there, or distortions in the moldings of the clear parts. But if they look good, I might just leave it full and close it up, you know. So something to be looked at. And actually, while I'm talking about it, let's just take a look at these. So, now a good way to judge quality of your clear parts is you can just put your hand behind them, and when you tilt them to see with the reflection of light, wavers in the clear or distortions when you look through them. Even with some printing on paper is a good way to do it as well. And you can see, wow, these actually look really good. I don't think I'll be cutting these. I think they're going to go in exactly as they are. Okay, well, there we go. Maybe I'll just cut the driver's side. I don't know. I still got to figure that out. All right, so anyway, but there's a little lesson in judging opacity. Now, and, distortions in the glass, clear parts. One thing do keep in mind, whenever there's a curve, especially on these older cars, the curve of the windshield, the rear window, just by the nature of the plastic, on the gentler curve, you will not have distortion. But on the harsher curve, it's almost impossible not to get distortion. Even eyeglasses, such as mine, as you go out to a curve in clear material, whether it's glass, polycarbonate lenses on glasses, or the clear plastic, light's going to hit that. It's going to bend in the character of the material, and you will have a little curve in the material. But like I said, the real thing you want to look for is how clear it is, and when you catch the light on it, if you see all sorts of waves. And here, when you look at this, if I'm capturing it right on the camera, all right, there we go. You can see the reflection of the light is pretty much one even band. Now, if there were waves in this clear, you would see what looked more like a wave coming on a beach, where you would have a row of white, a lesser row of white, a brighter row of white, and that is from the surface, looking at it in cross, would be waved, the light's hitting it, and then you get the different reflective characters. But here, you can see that looks quite good. And it's not just that one piece. We can see it on both sides. And if you watch some other build videos from people, people who get real nitpicky with their kits, one of the first things they'll look at to judge the quality of moldings is the sprue of clear parts, and, see, how well that came out. Okay, so that's that. And I'm going to get back to it. Probably have a few JPEGs for the remainder of the body buildup, what little there is, and then its final reveal. Okay, so back to work. Okay, and here we go. Final build reveal for the Moebius models. 1965 Golden Commandos factory altered wheelbase Plymouth satellite. And there we go, as it turns away from us. Timing is everything. So, kit is done. And as usual, I'll make my silly statement. Happy with the way it came out. But yes, had a few questions while I was doing it about the the paint scheme and if I would really like the way the colors looked when it was done. But I think all in all, finished product, it looks pretty good. Certainly these great decals that come with the kit help dress it up and just add that extra little bit, as decals should, to take the build and really elevate it to a real nice finished looking product. And along that line, this kit went together very well. So in the beginning of this build video, I said that it looked like thumbs up for Moebius on this kit, and I have to say, now that it's built and finished and in its final form, it's a great kit. It's a great kit to build. Things fit, the parts are clean, stuff goes together without a problem. It doesn't fight you. The only fit issue I had on the entire kit was the rear bumper, and that was right along the sides where it curls around the bottom of the rear quarter panel. It was a very tight fit, and I had to shave a little out on the inside of the bumper. And that's it. Everything else went together. No problems whatsoever. So that's not only a great compliment to the kit, but that's also something that, when you build kits, you don't get to say too often, that a kit goes together so well. When you get into the military models, that's a different thing. Those are more like enthusiast kits. The price point is a little bit higher, so the expectation is at a different level for how the kit will assemble. But here in the majority of the model building world, let's say, doing cars, this, for its price, it's right in the average of what you would pay for a kit. Car kits in this scale, they all pretty much run the same price, this being no exception. But with this, you get a great fitting kit. Builds easy, looks nice when it's done, it's well detailed. Just because a kit has a simple assembly does not mean that it has to be simplistic. And by simple assembly, I mean, like I said before, the parts don't fight you. Locator marks work out where they're supposed to be. Things fit. The fit of the chassis pan and interior into the body was so good, I didn't even bother gluing it because it's not going anywhere. It was a little bit of a trick to get it in there and seated properly, I will say that. But once it was in, that was it. Done deal. The only piece that I had to work with a little bit on the body, well, aside from the bumper, was the hood. My hood that I use for the tall injector stacks was a little warped, so I just had to get a little handy with it and just give it a gentle bend to put it into shape, and that was it. No problem. So as it goes around here, you can see the kit, as you're seeing it, is the way it was in the box. There are only two things that I added from outside the kit. That was the seatbelt add-on. Well, as it comes around, we can see it. And in a little bit, I'll take the hood off, and the wiring for the engine is there. In terms of parts in the kit, the only things I did differently, I added the windshield wipers because I thought, if you're going down the track, maybe you need to keep that windshield clean. And I did do the custom wheels, front and rear. I really like the way they look, obviously matching, but I think they give a nice look the kit. So, and that was it. Otherwise, it's right as the instructions dictated. And the only thing I would say about this kit, and it's not a criticism by any means, I would recommend this if you want to do a first time build. This is a good kit to start with because of the reasons I mentioned before in the way that the kit goes together. The only finicky part is adding those fuel injector control linkages between the risers there, as I showed in the JPEGs earlier. They can be a little tricky to get in there. If you don't have tweezers, you're not going to get them in there. But you know what? They're not critical pieces to the build. They're two tiny pieces, and if you find it frustrating, you know what? You leave them out and you continue with the build. And, especially as a first-time build, the most important thing is to get to finish your build so that you know you can do it. And then, as you move on and you get a few extra tools and you get a little more patience and, a little more comfort level working with parts and stuff, then you go ahead and you do something with a little more delicate work. Now, I did add the seatbelts. Now what I'm going to do, and the engine wiring, as this comes around, I am going to stop it and we'll take a little closer look at that. I covered the mirror on the turntable here because with the colors, I found it very difficult to get the camera focused and everything with all the white and whatnot reflecting. So let's get the hood off. And it does fit into place nicely around those stacks. So let's get a closer look. We'll start under the engine bay. And I've shown this before in the JPEGs, but here it is all said and done. And, I think the wiring adds a real nice touch to it. But as you can see, even if you do not go ahead and do that, if you just build it, the engine and the engine bay as they come, it will look quite nice under there. And again, we can see the seat belts in there. It's not a complicated thing to do. And I think it certainly adds a nice little touch of detail in there. So even though it's pretty hard to see on the finished product. Underbody on this kit, it's not a complex car. So the underbody in the kit is not going to be super complicated. But the way it builds up in its finished form here, you have the detail you would want. You got the rear shocks, you got your leaf springs, your differential, your headers coming off, the exhaust for the engine. They do sight nicely to the engine and to the frame. You have all your front suspension detail, and that all looks good under there without being a big messy assembly or being too simplistic. Sometimes it may seem a little odd to concentrate on the underbody detail when the car is sitting on its wheels, but if you appreciate what goes into building the kit, especially if you do a couple, you're going to find any little place that can be more detail, you're going to want it. And because I am interested in mechanical things, I appreciate that underbody detail, the under the hood detail, which is why you don't see me build curbside kits where there is no engine detail. The hood is sealed because there's no interest there for me. I want that mechanical aspect of it. So the other cool part with this kit is I'm going to leave the hood to the side here and let it start rotating again. You can leave the hood off and it looks just fine, just as like an open front end street rod with that nice engine sitting there with those crazy injector stacks poking up, ready to blast down the pavement. So there we go. Moebius Plymouth Golden Commandos kit. Good kit. If you want to start the hobby, good place to start. If you're already building stuff, great kit to build. It will not disappoint. and you end up, obviously I did the two-tone paint job, but even if you did a straight white paint job like the other version of the Golden Commandos, or you do whatever color you want, just do a one color body, it's still going to build up to a sharp-looking vehicle once you are done. So I will call it quits on this one. As always, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you got to see some extra things. Got to talk about a few extra things on this one. Always try to throw a little something in there with each build. If you find it helpful, please do, subscribe, share, like, all that, as I say, all that good YouTube stuff. And I will let it take a turn and say I will see you for the next build. Alrighty.